This is Steve Zeltzer with WorkWeek, and there are important struggles that have been taking place in Turkey over the past decades, and particularly with decline of the United States and other struggles as far as U.S. imperialism. And joining us is Derya Koca, and she is an analyst and a member of the party in Turkey. Welcome to our show.
I'm Derya. I have been a part of women movement and worker movement in Turkey since 2008, from the very beginning of my university education. I'm a member of Socialist Laborers Party in Turkey, which is an Trotskyist revolutionary party in Turkey, and tries to build a revolutionary party in Turkey and trying to lead up the youth movement in university campuses and in the city centers and in the working class neighborhoods. And we are currently in a very important and very historical youth movement, which is a kind of an semi-uprising in Turkey against Erdogan's plans to declare a total dictatorship in Turkey. It has been going on since March 18th. And now currently we are in the middle of this movement. Maybe we can in this show maybe we can talk about the details about this movement, but basically we are in a country where is located between Europe and Middle East, which have very peculiar and important revolutionary and worker struggle historical tradition. So Turkey is one of the most important country which has currently very important developments. So it is very big honor to attend this show, to be with you, Steve. Thanks for inviting, because we are also closely following what's happening in the US, because Trump and Erdogan are very close friends.
The United States has been very much involved in Turkey, particularly in overthrowing Turkish governments with coups, 1980 with military coups, and instituting privatization of Turkey. The United States has pushed privatization of telecom, of many different industries in Turkey to benefit American capitalists who wanted to invest in Turkey, and also has supported the rise of fundamentalism in Turkey, and the Erdogan government. Uh, the economic crisis now in Turkey is ongoing, the inflation. What is the economic situation for the working class in Turkey today? And what is that creating as far as a fight back by the Turkish working class and Kurdish working class?
Yes, when it's a very good beginning to emphasize the pro-imperialist, determine Erdogan as a pro-imperialist and a pro-US power in Turkey, because the fundamental Islamism or moderate Islamism was determined as a tool to rule the whole Middle Eastern countries, because the revolutionary ideas and the socialist wave was so powerful among these countries: Turkey, Syria, Iraq, Egypt, Palestine. All these countries were very left tendencies, have very strong left tendencies. Uh, the biggest forces, of course, was Stalinist forces, but they had seen this as a very big threat, and they intentionally supported, fed, and sponsored and financed the Islamist powers. Without this international support, Erdogan's just popular vote was had no capability to build up this kind of an oppressive regime. He is already an pro-capitalist, pro-Western imperialist power, but his rise in the rule to the office uh, has that dates back to uh, United States support in the very beginning of the 2000s, and from that date, the working class in Turkey is experiencing a rapid impoverishment. Following the 2001 economic crisis in Turkey, Erdogan came to power with popular support, but with an international support of the imperialism. But his reaction, his electoral victory was as a reaction of the masses against the establishment parties, which was very similar to Trump. When 2000 crisis hit the global capitalism, an influx of hot money, cheap foreign currency, and capital started into peripheral countries, including Turkey. During this period, a massive expansion of capital and markets, along with cheap foreign currency, created a false perception of prosperity and purchasing power. Erdogan and Lula had the government at the same date in Brazil, the same dynamics. It was a left populism. Here, it was the right wing populism. Erdogan used his economic development in his favor and used a deep identity polarization among working classes and among Kurdish and Turkish people, split them three, split them into four, five, how much he can do, and make all these neoliberal reforms into practice, turned them into practice, and started a huge privatization campaign. I think it is the 90% of all privatization of the modern history of Turkey. Unions organized in the public sectors were weakened, and pressure on the working class and the left increased, causing a continuous erosion from that on. Moreover, all that cheap money was invested in primarily in the construction sector, but just wasted. They used to make this urban rent to turn into an pro-Erdogan support, a political support from new emerging capitalist circles. Now, global dynamics are moving in the opposite direction. The balance of power between the US and China, war dynamics in the Middle East, and the international crisis are now deeply affecting Turkey also, very similar to Argentina again. Turkey is experiencing a crisis in which working classes, the pensioners, the students, the ordinary people living a very daily struggle and a very deep poverty. For now, they try to control the currency. They try to control to prevent a huge unemployment, but that means an austerity plan, a very brutal austerity plan, is on the rise. For example, pensioners are in a terrible situation. Most of them have to keep working to survive till death. Buying meat is almost impossible for a pensioner in Turkey. And paying for their rents is impossible in big cities. It is impossible. It is also impossible for students to study without working. Turkey has a population of 81 million, and 8.5 million workers earn only a minimum wage. This means, including their families, this represents nearly 40 million people living under the poverty line, hunger line, with minimum wage. Moreover, Turkey has the longest working hours among the OECD countries. Despite high inflation, wages have been kept low under the guise of suppressing inflation, and for the past 4 years, causing a continuous impoverishment. And there are several budget problems in areas such as education and healthcare. Food inflation and the rents are two biggest issues. In Turkey, even if you graduate from a good university, it is nearly impossible to live alone in an apartment alone. Social activities like cultural activities are just luxuries. Currently, we are witnessing a wave of protests led by youth, and as I already mentioned, this extreme poverty is another dynamic why youth are on the streets. And the unemployment, the lack of future, hopelessness, long working hours, extremely low wages, among the key dynamics behind this movement.
The other issue of the economic crisis is the basically this privatization and looting of the country. Trump now has just visited the Emirates theocracy there and made financial arrangements, gotten a jet for $400 million for himself, but also the looting of the Turkish economy. Has that gone on? It seems like Trump sees what Erdogan done as something that he should take up as far as making personal wealth in the economy. Is that going on in Turkey? Is there a connection?
Yes, yes, Erdogan himself was a poor leader. He was a poor grassroots movement in the Islamist movement. That's why in the poor neighborhoods, that Islamist movement was um, supported against the establishment parties. Now Erdogan is one of the richest men among these authoritarian governments. He he only wants himself to rule whole country with judiciary, no, not judiciary, no parliamentary branches, no ministries. Just Erdogan himself rules the country now. No media, no independent media. All just two or three weak TV channels broadcasting opposition ideas. All courts, media, any state offices, just in one hand in Erdogan. And criticizing in them openly, even in the street interviews, means that you will be jailed.
And many journalists have also been jailed in Turkey. This is
Hundreds, hundreds, hundreds. Most of them are Kurdish. And it is a very daily issue to be arrested and jailed for a journalist in Turkey. But they do not do it um, with even following the ordinary judicial processes. No, they raid your houses uh, in the middle of the night, and they take your all the digitals, all the devices, and they don't give it back anymore. And probably you will be jailed. Up after a couple of months, you will be released, and this is a kind of lifestyle for a journalist in Turkey. This happening regularly.
And the issue of the expansion of Turkey. I mean, Erdogan has said that he wanted to be the new Ottoman Empire, to
Yeah.
rebuild the empire. The intervention in Syria, the Syrian war, his going to Syria, the army there, and also the expansion of Turkey to rebuild the Ottoman Empire. What's behind that? And what has that meant for the people of Turkey and particularly the Syrians and minorities in Turkey?
Yes, that's a very good question. The presence of U.S. imperialism in the region, particularly through the Syrian war, expanded significantly during Erdogan's rule. Erdogan's international support for Syrian war directly served all the interests of U.S. imperialism. In return, he received a substantial support from both US and the EU because he has his desire to be the new caliphate, the new Ottoman leader, and it is a serious pan-Islamist project. Um, for instance, jihadist terrorists who were funded and trained to fight in Syria enter through Turkish territory. They still stay in Turkish territory. Turkish military, Turkish intelligence services, and Turkish jihadist terrorists, together with the all state power and the budget, fight in Syria. They stayed in Turkey for extended periods and were even treated in state hospitals. In terms of jihadist terrorism and war crimes, Erdogan is a major accomplice. They are responsible for millions of people's bloodshed, and they are responsible for Alevite people is now massacred and executed by Golani regime in Turkey. I'm sorry, in Syria. This mutual beneficial relationship aligned with Erdogan's grand political Islam project and his ambitions to become a major leader in the Middle East. Both sides are profited from this arrangement. The plan for Syrian refugees to remain in Turkey also became another project for the EU and the US, because he gave big guarantees for them, and they still keeping his words. And refugees flows to Europe were halted, but millions of Syrian refugees remained in Turkey without any legal rights, merely labeled as guests, leading to extreme exploitation. Immigrants from Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Iran live in dire poverty and exploitation in Turkey. According to the law, according to the migration law in Turkey, if you want to be a refugee, you should be coming from the Western countries, not the Eastern countries. If you're an English guy, you can be a refugee in Turkey, but who wants this? That's the question. Turkey is not the best place to be a refugee for a Westerner. So these while anti-immigrant sentiments were somewhat suppressed due to Islamist ideology, Erdogan's weakening has now led to the rise of far-right parties that gain the strength through the anti-immigrant rhetoric, as we have been seeing in EU countries. There is a similar phenomenon in Turkey. However, I think I also think it is important to emphasize one point. Erdogan is not simply a puppet of imperialism. The Turkish state is a sub-imperialist power and regional actor capable of playing relatively autonomous roles. For example, Erdogan's sponsorship of group HTS militants trapped in Idlib and his role in Golani terrorists attempted to seize power in Syria, while US had determined to decrease its military capacity in Syria. The guarantee was for this project was Erdogan's authority in the ground. So Erdogan did not abandon this project even when US almost conceded defeat and agreed Assad's victory, at least Putin's victory in Syria. But Erdogan succeeded in carrying forward, earning Trump's admiration and praise. Developing drone technology, making moves in Karabakh war in Azerbaijan, and pursuing some imperialist agendas set Erdogan apart from being a mere puppet. Yes, yet he still operates within the boundaries drawn by US imperialism. On the other hand, Trump's return to power in the US opened many doors for Erdogan, including declaring the last repressive move against the right to vote in Turkey. When Trump came to power, Erdogan swiftly began implementing his authoritarian agenda. He imprisoned his strongest opponent, and 3 years before the election, set the stage to enter the elections potentially without any real rivals, aiming to establish a fully authoritarian regime. So, without gaining power in the international arena, without any support from the international arena, you can just implement these agendas all alone.
And this attack on democratic opposition, including capitalist parties in Turkey, who are against the government, jailing them and
Mhm.
trying to crush any kind of opposition. It seems that Trump likes that success of Erdogan in being able to stay in power using those kind of tools, those kind of measures, and the also the role of Europe in European investment in Turkey, Germany, and also these regimes, theocratic regimes, propping up, helping to prop up Erdogan.
Mhm.
The continuation of the government actually has served the interests of imperialists
Mhm.
who want Erdogan to continue to play this role.
Yes, he's he has kind of using this migrant Trump, migrant issue as a Trump against US sometimes, against EU sometimes, because he has a power of 4 million migrant Trump card in his hand, holding it. Sometimes he tries to use it, but when EU declares a new budget of migrants to be stopped in Turkey, then that he keeps silence. Um, so EU has been already always the very first imperialist partner for Turkish bourgeoisie. The first destination of international trade for Turkey is EU. So whatever Erdogan wants to be, or whatever Erdogan wants to create in Turkey, he always has dependency of international money, international capital, firstly to the EU countries. So he always has these boundaries. If Turkey had oil resources, everything would be very easy for him. I'm very sad for Erdogan. He wants to be a Putin, but he doesn't have any oil resources.
And of course, there's oil in Syria, which and oil in Iraq. And I mean, the intervention, the imperialist invasion of Iraq, the attack on Syria, these have actually helped Erdogan. It looks like because he plays a role in allowing this development.
Yes, when I was in my second year in college, Syrian war has started. Um, it was a very, very, very bad experience of not capable of stop your government to intervene in your sisters and brothers' countries, which is a bordering country. It was a definite end for us. Islamist jihadism would also affect what's happening in Turkey, like we had witnessed the war in Afghanistan. Pakistan has been used for these jihadist forces to make intervene in Afghanistan, and Pakistan turned into a home for jihadists. What we had witnessed in Turkey, was a very similar case. Um, there were serious and very deadly bomb attacks in Turkey against left, against progressive unions, against Kurdish forces. It was that they were deadly attacks. And Erdogan even used these terrorist actions to increase his authority and declare state of emergency, etc. So the intervention in Syria was a win-win game for Erdogan and US. But in Iraqi war, it was not the case. Thanks to a very, very big, massive protest and mass movement, we had stopped our government to directly intervene in Iraq. We stopped the project. The US uses Turkey as a base, a military base, to intervene in intervene in Iraq. But there was millions of people around the globe to stop this bloody war. But when you make the propaganda that it is a democratic revolution in Turkey, in Syria, and we help them, and this ideological battle um, make left trapped by imperialist powers. We did not have enough clarity to be against this war and intervention. So they use this ideological confusion, and when they are organizing and planning the intervention in Syria, and we paid very high prices for this.
Yeah, the rise of fundamentalism, as we know, was encouraged in Afghanistan, where the United States wanted to bring all the fundamentalists together to remove
Mhm.
the government in Afghanistan, and gave the rise to a fundamentalist movement. And it seems that that similar pattern has taken place throughout the Middle East. that the rise of fundamentalism is directly the result of U.S. imperialism and its interests in keeping control of the region. What has been the role of the left, the opposition in Turkey, the unionists, the union parties? What has happened as far as fighting back against the attacks on the working class privatization and the economic attacks?
The left forces in Turkey, yes, not big forces we have currently in Turkey, but there are many big left forces in Turkey. Apart from it, Turkey is the only country located in Middle East, but have really big left forces. However, these left forces lost the ideological and physical battle against Erdogan. I think it is because the ideological defeat, because the the left in Turkey is dominated by Stalinist left. It is far from explaining the masses to the defeat of the fall of the USSR. Firstly, secondly, they have never a class-centered attitude against all those years. For example, Erdogan's biggest tool is to using religious sectarianism and division of the working class, by calling them the religious one, the secular ones, and the others, and the Kurdish ones and the Turkish ones. While Turkey was divided into these identity policies, all those huge privatization agendas was already implementing. For example, the biggest industries, oil, um, the oil companies, the sugar companies, the state companies, the tobacco or alcohol, they were privatized by dismissing tens of thousands of workers. And but while privatization process had begun, the Turkey was discussing the headscarf issue, whether we can allow women to wear headscarf in public buildings or not, in schools or not. It is highly polarizing issues make Erdogan this much powerful authoritarian leader. He used very, very, very bad sectarian agendas, and left organizations, including Communist Party, which has the strongest one, has strongest member and ranks, always in favor of secular bourgeois republican ideas that make ordinary working class Erdogan's leadership to be legitimized. So these cultural divisions uh, around the globe is the only power I think that can be used by these populist left right wing or left wing bourgeois leaders. Trump uses the same shit. Erdogan uses the same thing. Bolsonaro had the government with these ideas. LGBTI or the misogynism, all kind of fundamentalist right-wing ideas used just to hide the real bourgeois agenda. When we follow the same identity politics, these always benefit the bourgeois leadership. So I think this kind of ideological defeat is um, the reason Erdogan has this kind of power despite these left forces and left trade unions tradition. Uh, and also, of course, Erdogan uses state apparatus and state oppressive forces to oppress left wing activists, students, Kurdish forces. That's another reality.
Maybe you can talk also about the recent development of the PKK. The Kurdish people have been have had left-wing parties. A lot of the left have joined those parties. The PKK
Yeah.
has said that they want a socialist program, and apparently Öcalan now has said that they should join the government and be with Erdogan and his imperial aims of expanding Turkey. What happened with the PKK, and why this big change in their policy, and what effects will it have on the Kurdish people of Turkey?
The PKK has announced its decision to dissolve. Yes, but there are still no concrete steps taken. Erdogan wants to be known as the leader who historically eliminated the PKK and ended so-called terrorism. Furthermore, he aims to gain the support of Kurdish national movement during the process of drafting a new constitution. We do not know what the Kurdish people will gain as a result of this, what is called as process of this armament or disband. We don't know what kind of bargaining is being made behind closed doors. We don't know what rights of the Kurdish people are being discussed. In our opinion, nothing at all. Erdogan needs a new constitution to remain in power indefinitely, and it is impossible for him to achieve this all alone. It is a tactic, on the other hand, but in reality, the ongoing process is aligned with the historical liquidation of all guerrilla based struggles. Is a historical tendency. In today's condition, no struggle that does not rely on mass movements, united class struggles, and general strike has any real impact. As Turkish revolutionaries, we recognize the Kurdish people's right to self-determination, whatever they want. We don't have any precondition for this. However, we believe that ensuring equality and freedom for millions of Kurds living under the massive bourgeois states, Turkey, Iran, Iraq, Syria, is not possible within the boundaries of the current imperialist capitalist system. US imperialism, for example, only uses Kurds for its own interests, supporting in Syria, supporting or abandoning them according to its agenda. We believe that the only solution for the peoples of the Middle East is a revolutionary project of internationalist unity of proletarian fraternity and all the oppressed nations with socialism. Um, we hope that Kurdish people regain their rights, even some small ones, through this process. Unarmization is a positive um, consequence of Kurdish people's own resistance throughout these years because they have been fighting for 50 years. They did not even recognized by any state officials as Kurds. They achieved this. This is a success. But their limitations in bourgeois boundaries, their national bourgeois leadership, their national bourgeois program had a limitation. For example, Barzani in Iraq has a very bad leadership and he's a very close ally of Erdogan. So the PKK movement has its historical limitations in terms of political agenda and armed struggle tactics. What we need is mass movement that unifies Kurdish people and Turkish people uh, in class struggle. That's the only way to overthrow the Turkish nationalism, also, that will bring about Kurdish people to be freed.
And do you think that this unification of the working class in Turkey and the Middle East will actually is opening up now because of these new conditions?
It's hard. It's hard. It's not that easy. For example, most of the Kurdish forces has a pro-Israel attitude. Even they do not have any closeness to the Palestinian struggle. because the US and the Israel giving arms to PKK movement or protect them in the international diplomatic arena or in the international policy. So they are highly dependent on the imperialist powers. We are not accusing them for this. If we had strong revolutionary forces that we had in 70s, uh, they could have another um, right to way to choose. But after especially the coup d'etat in Turkey in 1980, which is led by the US imperialism, and uh, the PKK movement was the only movement protect itself and start fighting back in 90s. Um, so we need all the Middle Eastern countries have a new wave of working class movements to start this fraternity atmosphere. From the very beginning, in the very beginning of 2019, there was a big uprising of Iraqi people led by the unemployed Iraqi youth against US imperialism. They were shouting their slogans: "We are not Sunnis, we are not Shia, we are Iraqi people." They were sick and tired of divided by sectarian ideas, divided by sectarian leaders, divided by um, sectarian constitution written by the US imperialism and Iraqi bourgeoisie. Uh, it was a very progressive way, but the Iranian forces and US forces and Iraqi bourgeoisie um, shot them death on streets together. Um, the Egyptian revolution was a tremendous progressive revolutionary process, um, and bloodily ended by a coup d'etat and Islamist leadership. And so there is a um, wave of and desire of unification among Middle Eastern countries, because these sectarian ideas, these sectarian uh, war policies are what Middle Eastern people are sick and tired of. Maybe we can remember also Lebanese fighters started their protest wave in the again in the 2020 or 2019, very similar dates. They were also united against the sectarian rule in the against sectarian system in Lebanon. The same problems, the same sectarian leaderships around these in all Middle East. So this is the only possible solution that have not implemented for decades. The revolutionary task is to make this reality.
And the bloodiest genocide, Napka. I'm interviewing you on the day of commemoration of the destruction, the murder, the massacres of Palestinians. Uh, and it's the anniversary today. And U.S. imperialism is continuing to support the genocide, the mass genocide going on in the Palestinian people. Now, Erdogan has said that he supports the Palestinian people and has attacked Netanyahu. What is the reality of the relationship between Netanyahu, the genocide US, and the Turkish government, the Turkish state?
Yeah, is a story of hypocrisy. Erdogan tries to have an attitude of a very strong supporter of Palestinian cause, but in reality, Turkey keeps trading with Israel, arm trading, food trading, construction material trading, and they put name Palestine on paper to legitimize it. They use it. Um, they tell the people that, yeah, we are selling cemetery or steel to the Palestinian people. Come on. Will they eat cemetery? Will they eat steel? They are starving. They are starving to death. And Turkish capitalists give electricity to Israel. They have some very important projects there. So we have been fighting against the Turkish bourgeoisie, which is in reality supporting Zionism in reality. But Erdogan needs to hide this reality. So they organize a state level rallies in huge ones. Millions of people, so called, are going out and to attend Erdogan's protests, but it's just a theater. They use this to hide their war crimes, or because in the Western countries, peoples are already uh, taking the streets to protest their governments, to denounce these war crimes, to denounce their governments, to support Israel. But in Turkey, the scenario is different. In state level, it seems like they are supporting Palestine. In reality, they are trading with Israel. In and we see Islamist organizations organize some kind of fundraising campaigns for Palestine, but they had never and ever supported Palestinian cause until Hamas took the leadership of Palestinian struggle. When the it was the 16th 1916th, dozens of revolutionary leftist people attending Palestinian cause went there and died there when fighting against Zionism. The Kurdish socialists, have been supporting them for 60 years because all those years, Islamists' first target was communism, which was which is stopped by so-called U.S. imperialism and Zionism. So they had never ever a support for Palestinian cause. When Islamists Hamas took the leadership, they have now so-called supportive action for Palestinian cause, but in reality, they just love money. They don't love Palestinian people. They love money. Even Palestinian activists are not legally let to um, have their offices in Turkey. Erdogan gives international imperialism guarantees to take control them, and all the other reactionary leadership in Arab leaders has the same attitude. The only real friends of Palestinian people is the working classes, not the bourgeoisie, not the ruling classes, not the Islamists.
Maybe you can talk about your some defense campaigns you're engaged in around journalists and other activists who've been imprisoned, and what people in around the world in the United States can do to support these struggles.
Currently, we are organizing a defense campaign, not for Kurdish and Turkish journalists or the activists or the students jailed in Turkey, but also the ones in Azerbaijan. Um, in Turkey, currently, dozens of students are in prison because they just participated in these protests. Um, but millions of people, hundreds of thousands of people, took the street and stopped Erdogan's this full authoritarian process. So it was a historical turning point, though the youth messed up everything for Erdogan. Uh, so he's very angry these days. He is very decisively attacking against the even bourgeois leaders, even bourgeois oppositional leaders, um, leftist people, union leaders, union members. Uh, it is just enough to be on the opposition side. Even the leader of the fascist party is arrested. One is in the government, another oppositional fascist party's leader is in the prison because he thinks that he would oppose the process of ceasefire or disbandment or disarmament, whatever you call it, with PKK, because they want a very radical Turkish nationalist, militaristic attitude against Kurdish people. So if you are right wing or left wing, if you are a socialist or a bourgeois opposition, you will be jailed. That's the rule in Turkey these days. Um, yes, we are just it. It's we're just laughing here. We just keep entertaining about this, but that's the fact. But we have a very strong campaign for our comrades who are currently in prison just because they wrote on wall Erdogan is a dictator. They are in prison more than 1 month. One of our comrades in under house arrest more than 5 months. Uh, SEP, my party, is accused by a so-called uh, Trotskyist terrorist organization. Dozens of our comrades, including me, was arrested and taken under custody for days, and we are just accused of being members of an armed terrorist organization. Being a terrorist is very easy in Turkey. As an ordinary person who hates Erdogan is a terrorist. Everyone is terrorist. Terrorist is a very famous and very popular occupation in Turkey nowadays. The biggest employment area. So uh, but I think we need a very big united front campaign, not for not in just in the boundaries of national agenda. We need an international solidarity campaign and united front to challenge this oppressive wave around the world, in the US, in Italy, in England, in the rest of the Europe, in Azerbaijan. Uh, all these right wing, uh, fascist, proto fascist, semi fascist, authoritarian government give each other the encourage to make the same thing, follow the same methods. They are in very close solidarity, so we have to do the same thing in for the working classes. um, that's why I think it is very important to join the solidarity campaign for Azerbaijani young activists. They are in jailed and tortured. They were tortured by electricity shock just because they are doing left wing journalism, left wing activism, and union activism. They are in jail and probably they will be in prison for long years just because Aliyev uh, declared his own dynasty and one man government like Erdogan. And there is no oppositional parties, there is no unions, there is no even any independent media in Azerbaijan. So an international solidarity campaign is urgently needed. They can anyone who can tap socialistmiddleeast.org, can find the link to join this campaign. We want them to be released immediately. Afiaddin and Ahmed, uh, both friends who just keep fighting against Aliyev dictatorship for the rights of the working class, for the rights of the Azerbaijani people, uh, must be known everyone in the world.
Okay, well, I want to thank you for joining us, and I hope our supporters and listeners do take up these defense campaigns. So thanks for joining us on our program, Derya. Solidarity.
Thank you. Please take my solidarity messages for the US working class. We have been following very, very, very closely the epicenter and the of the working classes in US and Argentina. Our comrades doing the great things. That will be the emancipation of working class. Will be its own work. Whatever you do there, your victory is our victory. Your defeat is our defeat. One class, one fight, one struggle. Take care.